starving alien mother offered herself for her child's life, but the human who took her gave her a home instead. Rain poured over the alien marketplace, turning the dirt streets into streams of black water. Faint neon lights flickered above broken stalls, and the air smelled of rust, smoke, and hunger. Traders shouted in dozens of languages their voices. Fighting against the storm, she moved through the crowd slowly, holding her child close to her chest. The alien mother's clothes were torn, her skin pale from cold. Her child, no more than 5, was silent, too tired to cry. The mother kept her head low, her large dark eyes scanning the shadows. She knew what she was about to do could not be undone. Every step felt heavier than the last. Her people had nothing left, no food, no shelter, no future. Only one thing remained, that she could trade. Herself. She reached the far end of the market, where the human section stood apart from the others. Most aliens avoided it. Humans were known to be clever traders, but also dangerous, especially toward those desperate enough to bargain their own bodies. A tall human man stood there under a leaking canopy. He wore a long coat, its collar pulled high against the rain. His hair was dark, his jaw unshaven, and his eyes sharp gray. Unreadable followed her as she approached. The mother's voice shook as she spoke. I offer myself for food for my child." Nearby humans chuckled. One muttered to another alien whore trying her luck. Laughter rippled through the group, but the man under the canopy didn't smile. He just watched her. "You're serious?" he asked, his voice calm but heavy. She swallowed hard and nodded. "He hasn't eaten in 2 days." Her arms tightened around the child. "I can work. I can clean." Or, she stopped, the rest of her words burning in her throat. The man's eyes flicked to the child, then back to her. The rain drummed between them. For a moment, she thought he would wave her away like all the others. Instead, he stepped forward. The people behind him went quiet. "I'll take you," he said finally. Her heart pounded. She had done it. She had sold herself. The thought made her stomach twist. "But," the man added, his voice dropping lower, "not for what you think." She blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "You'll see," he said. "Follow me." He turned and began walking through the muddy streets without looking back. The mother hesitated. Was this a trick? Was she walking into something worse? The child in her arms whimpered from the cold. She looked at his thin face and knew she had no choice. She followed. They walked past the market's edge, where stalls gave way to narrow alleys. The further they went, the fewer people there were. The rain washed the noise away until only the sound of their footsteps remained. Finally, they reached a small transport vehicle. The man opened the passenger door. "Get in." She climbed inside, holding her child tight, her eyes darting to the dark corners of the cabin. No chains, no cages. Just worn seats and the faint smell of coffee. The man got in beside her, started the engine, and drove into the night. Minutes passed in silence. Streetlights slid across his face, showing faint scars along his jaw and neck. He didn't look at her. "Where are you taking us?" she asked at last. "To my home," he said simply. She gripped the child closer. "Why?" He didn't answer. Outside, the city lights faded, replaced by the empty darkness of the countryside. The rain softened, tapping against the glass in a slow rhythm. Her eyelids grew heavy, but fear kept her awake. After nearly an hour, the vehicle stopped before a small weather-worn house. No guards, no gates. Just a wooden porch and a warm light glowing through the window. He stepped out, opened her door, and said, "Inside, both of you." She followed him into the house, the air inside thick with the smell of fresh bread and something cooking. The warmth hit her like a wave, making her knees weak. The man hung up his coat and motioned toward the kitchen. "Sit." She lowered herself into a chair, setting the child beside her. He was staring at the table where a loaf of bread and a steaming pot waited. The man served them food without saying a word. He filled the child's bowl first, then hers. "Eat," he said. She hesitated. "You haven't taken anything from me." Yet, he looked at her, his gray eyes steady. "I didn't buy you for that." "Then why?" She whispered. The corner of his mouth twitched, not quite a smile, not quite a frown. "Because I don't like watching people starve." She stared at him, unsure if she believed him. No human had ever done something like this for her kind. The child began to eat, small hands trembling around the spoon. She wanted to believe this man was different, but deep inside, suspicion burned like a cold flame. Some debts, she knew, were not paid in money. As the rain eased outside, she glanced at the man and thought, whatever his reason, she and her child were now in his world. And worlds like his always had a price. Cliffhanger ending for part 1. Later that night, as she carried the child to a small bed, she overheard him in the other room, speaking softly into a communicator. "They'll come. For her, and when they do, I'll be ready." The alien mother woke to the sound of quiet humming. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. The blanket over her was warm, softer than anything she had felt in years. The air smelled of bread and fresh coffee. She sat up quickly, her eyes scanning the room. No chains. No locked doors. Her child was curled up beside her, sleeping peacefully for the first time in days. His small face looked calm now, not twisted by hunger. The mother rose, bare feet touching the wooden floor. She moved silently through the small house, following the smell of food. The human man was in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, stirring a pot on the stove. The light from the window fell across his face, showing more scars she hadn't noticed last night. His movements were slow, careful, like someone used to living alone. "You're awake," he said without turning. She stopped at the doorway. "Why are you feeding us?" He glanced at her, then back at the pot. "Because you're hungry." "That's not what I mean," she said, her voice sharp. "You didn't take anything from me. You didn't touch me. Humans don't just give without a reason." The man turned off the stove and poured thick soup into 2 bowls. "Eat first. Talk later." She hesitated, then sat at the table. He placed the bowl in front of her and the other in front of her child, who had wandered in, rubbing his eyes. The boy's face lit up at the sight of food. The mother kept watching the man. Every small kindness made her more suspicious. No one helped her kind unless they wanted something in return. The child began to eat, spoon clinking against the bowl. The man finally sat down with his own food, though he didn't eat right away. "You have a name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Lyra." He nodded. "I'm Kale." Silence hung between them. Outside, rain dripped from the roof in a slow rhythm. After a few minutes, Lyra spoke again. "Last night, you said they'll come for me." "Who?" Kale's gray eyes met hers. "People who think you're theirs to own. Traders, hunters, collectors. The kind of men who'd sell a child to a mine without blinking." Her hands tightened around the spoon. "They know where I am?" "Not yet," he said. "But they will." Her heart pounded. "Then why bring me here? You could have left me." Kale leaned back in his chair. "Because leaving you there wouldn't have sat right with me. I don't care what you think of humans, Lyra. Some of us don't like seeing people thrown away." Thrown away. The words hit her like a stone, but she still didn't trust him. She COULDN single quotes T. Later that day, Kale showed her the small spare room at the back of the house. "It's not much, but it's yours," he said. The room had a bed, a chair, and a window looking out onto an overgrown garden. Lyra set the child down on the bed, his little hands running over the blanket. For a brief moment, she almost let herself feel safe. Almost. That night, as the wind whispered through the trees, Lyra got up to get water. She froze in the hallway. Kale's voice drifted from the living room. I found her in the market. She's not like the others. She's got a kid. Yeah, I know it's trouble. No, I'm not handing her over. There was a pause. If they find her here, they'll come for me too, he said quietly. But I'm not letting them take her. Lyra stepped back into the shadows, her heart racing. Who was he talking to? And why was he willing to put himself in danger for her? She didn't know it yet, but this was the night their fates became tied together. Cliffhanger for part 2, outside. Far down the road, a single light moved through the rain, a small ship engine humming in the dark, coming slowly toward Cale's home. The morning came with a pale silver light breaking through the clouds. Lyra woke to the smell of metal, not food this time, but oil and gunpowder. She found Cale in the shed behind the house, sleeves rolled up, cleaning a weapon that looked older than she was. Pieces of armor hung on the walls, scratched and burned. Maps lay scattered over a workbench, marked with red circles and strange human symbols. Lyra stood in the doorway, the cold air biting her skin. "You're a soldier," she said quietly. Cale didn't look up. "Was. Why did you leave?" He kept working, his hands steady. "Because I was told to kill people who didn't deserve it, your people." Her throat tightened. She had grown up hearing that humans were heartless machines of war who destroyed anything in their path. And here was one, admitting he had walked away from that life. But she also knew a man who left the army still carried the army inside him. Cale glanced at her. "You should know there are still those who remember me. Some will want me dead. Others will try to use me to get to you." She crossed her arms. "You're saying keeping me here is dangerous for you. It's dangerous for both of us." They stood in silence, the rain tapping faintly on the roof. That afternoon, Lyra went into the village nearby to trade some of the bread Cale had given her for cloth. She felt eyes on her everywhere she went, humans pausing mid-step, whispering, watching her and her child. One woman stopped her on the street. She was tall, with cold green eyes. "You're staying with Cale?" she asked. Lyra hesitated. "Yes." The woman's mouth twisted. "He's trouble, always has been. Men like him don't just help aliens, not without a reason." Lyra's stomach turned. The suspicion she'd carried from the start grew heavier. When she returned to the house, Cale was gone. His coat was missing, and his communicator was gone from the table. Hours passed. The child grew restless. Then, just as the sky began to darken, she heard the low growl of an engine outside. Cale stepped through the door, his coat soaked, a small box in his hands. His face was pale. "I had to get this," he said, setting the box on the table. "Your boy's sick, fever. I found medicine from an old contact." She opened the box. Inside were vials of alien-made medicine, rare and expensive. Before she could speak, a sharp knock rattled the door. Cale froze. His hand went to the small pistol at his hip. "Take him," he whispered, nodding to her child. "Back room. Now." Lyra grabbed the boy and slipped into the back of the house, heart pounding. Through the crack of the door, she saw Cale open the front door. A shadow filled the frame, a tall alien, broad-shouldered, with black scales along his neck. His voice was low and cold. "You have something that belongs to me." Lyra's blood turned to ice. Cliffhanger for part 3. The bounty. Hunter stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room until they stopped right on the doorway where Lyra hid. The alien bounty hunter stepped inside without asking. His boots were heavy, each step sinking into the wooden floor as if he owned the place. Rainwater dripped from his coat, pooling in dark circles. Cale stood still, one hand resting casually at his side, but Lyra could see the faint tension in his shoulders. "You've got the wrong house," Cale said, voice calm. The bounty hunter's black-scaled face twisted into a slow grin. "No, human, I tracked her scent. She's here, and the child." His eyes narrowed. "The child is worth more than the mother." In the back room, Lyra's hands tightened around her son's small body. The boy's breath was warm against her chest, his fever making him too weak to understand the danger. Cale stepped forward, blocking the hunter's view. "Leave now," he said, "and I won't break your jaw." The hunter laughed a deep, rumbling sound. "You think you can fight me?" His hand slid under his coat, pulling out a curved blade that glimmered in the light. Cale's gray eyes hardened. "I don't think I know." The first strike came fast. The blade slashed toward Cale's chest, but he stepped sideways, grabbing the hunter's arm and twisting it hard. The room erupted into chaos, furniture scraping, wood splintering, heavy boots pounding the floor. Lyra flinched with every crash, clutching her son tighter. Cale drove his shoulder into the hunter, slamming him against the wall. The aliens. Tail whipped out, striking Cale's ribs with a dull thud. Cale grunted, but didn't let go. In a flash, the hunter shoved Cale back, knocking over the table. A bowl shattered on the floor. "You can't keep her," the hunter snarled. "She belongs to my contract. I paid for her debt." Cale spat blood onto the floor. "She's not a debt. She's a person." The hunter lunged again, but Cale ducked low, driving his fist into the alien's gut. The sound was like hitting stone, but the hunter staggered. Cale followed with a knee to the jaw, sending the bounty hunter crashing into the wall. Silence, except for the sound of heavy breathing. Cale stood over the hunter, pistol drawn now, pointed between the alien's eyes. "Go," he said, voice low and dangerous. "Or I'll make sure you don't get up next time." The hunter's nostrils flared, but he backed toward the door, clutching his ribs. "This isn't over, human," he hissed. "You can't hide her forever." When the door slammed shut, Cale leaned against the wall, breathing hard. Blood trickled from a cut on his cheek. Lyra rushed out from the back room, her son still in her arms. "You're hurt." "I've been worse," Cale said, wiping the blood with the back of his hand. "You fought for me," she whispered, almost in disbelief. Cale's eyes met hers. "I told you, I'm not letting them take you." She stared at him, torn between fear and something she couldn't name. But she knew one thing. If she stayed here, the hunters would come again. If she left, Cale would be alone and possibly dead because of her. The choice would haunt her all night. Cliffhanger for Part 4. Far beyond the village, under the cover of storm clouds, 3 more bounty ships lit up their engines and turned toward Cale's coordinates. The storm outside had not stopped all night. Rain beat against the windows like impatient fingers, and the wind howled through the trees. Inside Cale's small home, the air felt heavy, charged with something neither of them wanted to speak about. Lyra sat at the edge of the bed in the back room, watching her son sleep. His fever had eased a little after the medicine, but his breathing was still weak. She brushed his hair from his face, trying to push away the fear clawing at her. Her mind kept replaying the fight from earlier, the way Cale had stood between her and the bounty hunter, taking the blows meant for her. No one had ever done that for her before. Not even from her own people. But kindness had a cost. If the bounty hunter's words were true, more would come. And if they found her here, Cale would be in even greater danger. She heard him in the next room, moving quietly, the sound of metal being set on wood. She stepped into the hallway and froze. Cale was at the table, cleaning and loading weapons, rifles, pistols, even a combat knife. His coat was hanging nearby, patched and reinforced like armor. "You're preparing for them," she said. Cale didn't look up. "I'm preparing for whatever walks through that door. You can't fight all of them." "I've fought worse," he said, sliding a pistol into its holster. Lyra stepped closer, her voice sharp. "You don't even know me. You could let me go. You'd be safe." Cale finally looked at her, his gray eyes steady. "Safe, Lyra? They wouldn't stop with you. They'd take the boy, too. Sell him to a mine, a gang, or worse. You think I could live with that?" Her chest tightened. She wanted to argue, to tell him it wasn't his responsibility. But she couldn't. Not after seeing the way he looked at her son, as if the boy's life mattered just as much as his own. "Why?" she whispered. "Why risk your life for us?" Cale's jaw tightened. "Because I've already failed once." Lyra frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked away, his voice low. "Years ago, during the war, I had orders to evacuate a settlement. I hesitated, thought I had more time. By the time I acted, it was gone. Everyone. And I've been living with that ever since." Silence filled the room, broken only by the rain. Finally Lyra spoke. "If I stay, they'll come for us both. If I go, maybe they'll leave you alone." Cale shook his head. "They won't, and I'm not letting you walk into their hands." Her heart pounded. Every instinct told her to run, to protect her son by disappearing. But something inside her, the same something that had noticed the way Cale stood in front of her last night, refused to leave him here alone. She took a deep breath. "Then I stay." For the first time since she'd met him, Cale smiled, not much, just a faint curve of his lips. "Good, then we fight together." But the moment was short-lived. A sharp, distant roar cut through the rain. Not thunder, engines. Cale's face hardened. "They're here." Cliffhanger for Part 5. Through the window, Lyra saw lights cutting. Through the storm, 3 ships descending fast toward the house, their shadows stretching long over the wet ground. The storm raged harder as the ships came down, their engines slicing the night with a deep, vibrating roar. Blue light from their thrusters lit the rain, turning every drop into falling sparks. Cale moved fast. "Lyra, lights out." She ran to the kitchen and flipped the switches. Darkness swallowed the room, broken only by flashes of lightning through the windows. "Take the boy," Cale said, shoving a small pistol into her hand. "If anyone gets past me, you use it. Don't hesitate." Her fingers tightened around the weapon. She had never fired a human gun before. Through the window, she saw dark figures drop from the ship's mercenaries in heavy armor, their rifles glowing faintly in the rain. They spread out, moving toward the house like shadows come to life. Cale grabbed his rifle and stepped to the front door. "Stay low," he said. Then he was gone, vanishing into the storm. The first shots came a heartbeat, later sharp cracks of gunfire cutting through the wind. Lyra crouched by the back door, keeping her son behind her, her pulse thundering in her ears. Outside, Cale moved like a ghost, slipping between trees and fence posts. He dropped one mercenary with a clean shot to the helmet, then rolled behind cover as another fired back. Rain splashed off his rifle, steam rising from the muzzle. 2 more closed in from the side. Cale let them come close before springing from the shadows, slamming one into a wall and driving his knife under the other's arm plate. They went down fast. Inside, Lyra heard footsteps on the porch, her breath caught. The back door rattled, someone was trying to force it open. She raised the pistol, her hands trembling. The lock snapped. The door swung wide, and a mercenary stepped in, water dripping from his armor. His visor reflected the lightning. "Move," he barked. Lyra's finger tightened. The shot rang loud. In the small kitchen, the recoil jolting her arm. The mercenary stumbled back, clutching his side, before Cale appeared behind him, finishing the job with a swift strike. "You all right?" he asked, his voice rough. She nodded, still shaking. I hit him." "Good," Cale said. "That's how you survive." But there was no time to breathe. More mercenaries were coming from the front, heavy boots pounding through the mud. Cale tossed her a spare magazine. "Reload if you run dry." They moved together, now Cale covering the front, Lyra watching the back. The house filled with the sound of gunfire, shouts, and breaking glass. Rain and wind poured in through shattered windows. Then a deep, mechanical hum rolled across the ground. Cale froze. "Gunship," he muttered. Through the storm, a massive craft rose above the treetops, its searchlights sweeping across the yard. The front of the ship opened, revealing the barrel of a mounted cannon. "They're going to level the house." Cale said, "How do we stop it?" Lyra asked. Cale's eyes narrowed. "We don't stop it, we bring it down." He grabbed a long tube-like launcher from the closet and checked the charge. "Cover me." Before Lyra could protest, he stepped out into the open rain, moving toward the gunship as its cannon began to glow with charging energy. Cliffhanger for Part 6. The cannon fired blinding light flooding the yard, just as Cale lifted the launcher to his shoulder and pulled the trigger. The night lit up like day. The gunship's cannon fired, a beam of white heat tearing through the yard. The ground shook, and a wall of Cale's house exploded into splinters, but Cale's rocket was already in the air. It streaked through the rain, slamming into the gunship's side with a deafening blast. Fire burst across the hull. The craft spun wildly, one engine erupting in flames, before it crashed into the trees with a roaring explosion. The shockwave knocked Lyra off her feet. She scrambled up, searching the smoke for Cale. He was there limping, coat torn, rifle still in his hand. His face was pale, but his eyes were locked on her. "Inside," he called. "Now." More mercenaries were pushing through the wreckage, but their formation was broken. Cale and Lyra fought side by side, moving from cover to cover, each watching the other's back. A shot grazed Cale's arm. Lyra fired back, dropping the attacker. She didn't even think anymore. She moved when Cale moved, fired when he fired. For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was fighting to protect him too. Minutes later, the last mercenary fell. The sound of his body hitting the wet ground swallowed by the rain. Silence. Only the crackle of fire from the downed gunship broke the stillness. Cale lowered his rifle, breathing hard. His coat was soaked in blood and rain. Lyra rushed to him, hands trembling. "You're hurt." "I'll live," he said with a faint, tired smile. But then the distant whine of engines reached them. Lyra's stomach twisted. More ships? No. These were different. Sleeker, cleaner, human authority craft. They swept down, landing near the ruins of the yard. Armed soldiers spilled out, their armor marked with the crest of the human colonial guard. The lead officer stepped forward. "Cale Wren, you are sheltering an unregistered alien refugee," he said, voice sharp. Lyra's heart stopped. She reached for her son, ready to run. But Cale stepped forward, squaring his shoulders. "She's under my protection," he said. Firmly, "By old soldiers' right. I claim sanctuary for her and the boy." The officer's eyes narrowed. "That law hasn't been used in years." Cale didn't blink. "It still stands." There was a tense pause. Then the officer signaled his men to stand down. "Very well, she's yours to protect. But if they come again, it's on you." The soldiers boarded their ships and left, their engines fading into the distance. Lyra turned to Cale, her voice shaking. "Why did you do that? You could have handed me over, saved yourself." Cale looked at her for a long moment. "Because you're not property, Lyra. You're family. And no one sells family." Her throat tightened. She had spent years being traded, bargained over, treated like something that could be bought. And now, someone had chosen her without wanting anything. In return, the boy ran to Cale, small arms wrapping around his leg. "Father," he whispered. Cale froze for a second, then knelt and hugged the child. Lyra felt something in her chest break open. She stepped closer, resting her hand on Cale's shoulder. "You didn't buy me," she said softly. "You saved me." Cale gave a small smile. "Guess I did." They stood together in the rain, the ruins of the battle smoldering behind them. The future ahead still uncertain, but no longer faced alone.